So there's a couple things I have to do before I split this lure. One of them is I use this long 3/16 drill and I drill it through. And in drilling, it follows that channel that I'd cut way back at the beginning, which is really great. Because I'm going to need this hole slightly bigger to put the stainless steel in. And down here there's going to be a belly hole that I have to drill. I haven't done that yet. So that's the two things I got to do. Drill this out for all four of these lures and then put belly holes in. So I'll mark that using my template because of course I've got that belly loop marked on the template. So all I do to mark the belly loop is I put that template and I mark a little mark right on the split there. That guarantees that it's going to be straight up and down. So here's the belly loop marked, and what I'm going to do is I have a nice set of German rad point drill bits, and I'm going to drill with a 6mm hole. And the interesting thing is as you drill down, you'll be able to feel when you go through that 3/16 hole. And in this particular one, I want to hit that hole, and you'll be able to feel it with the drill press, and then go a tiny bit more. And I'll show you why a little bit later. It happens when we split this lure that going just a little bit more makes sense. All four of these poppers are ready to go. They've all had their holes drilled, they've all been sanded. One of the things that has to go inside this hole is a little clip like this that I make. And it slides in here when the lure is split. So we're very, very close to splitting them. Most of these lures are ready to split right now. This one I have to work on the end a little bit. That didn't turn out quite like I wanted it. But we're getting very, very close to splitting. So this is how I split it. I put a cut mark on top of the glue line on one side. And then I put a cut on the glue line on the other side. And then I line up the two, and I put my razor blade on the two, and I give it a little tap. And lo and behold, it splits. Now, that was more than a little tap. So that meant I had too much glue on it. So I work the blade down. If it doesn't want to go, I give it a couple more taps. And I work that blade back and forth. And there you go. Success. So we're at a stage where we want to add the stainless steel through wire that goes all the way through from the concave front to the back, and the loop will look something like this. Now this is going to be made out of 3/32 stainless steel, and so I need to introduce you to a few tools. These are wire pliers. They're round. They work great for this. I'm not going to talk about this one right away. It doesn't really have a name, but what it's used for is rounding out this hole. Because when you bend it with these wire pliers, it's never round. So this will help you make it look more professional because it'll be rounder. This is a set of German nippers. Wow, these are great. I used to try and cut the stainless steel wire with these pliers, and I would grunt for all I was worth. And these things, it's like cutting butter with a hot knife. And of course, you'll need a good pair of pliers. I won't show you, but I've also got a 4-inch vise here that I'm going to be using. And of course, all of these things you're going to need if you're going to do this. So this 3/32 stainless steel rod is 3 feet long. Got a flat spot on the end of it because it is a welding rod, and they have some numbers on it that identifies the kind of steel that it is. And I generally go back about 6 inches, and I will take my wire pliers and I will bend away from me. And then what I'll do is I'll take the tag end and bring it all the way around. Like that. So now I have to go to the vise, so I'm going to have to reset the camera. So the bend is always too big when you use the wire pliers. So the first thing you got to do is reduce that bend. And you'll use a 4-inch vise to do that. Now, you notice the first thing, you can already tell it's not round, but not to fear, we'll get there. So now, what I do is I put the whole thing in the vise. And I'm going to do something I call a wraparound. First of all, of course, I'm going to straighten this out. And now I'm going to take a couple of wraps around the main stainless steel. This is why you've got to have a good set of pliers. Keep it low. Now, this stainless steel has a breaking strength of 500 or 600 pounds. So there's no way that any fish, unless he's got a pair of pliers in his pocket, is going to break this. So you do a couple, and you really don't have to do too many. And then what you do is you use these wonderful German snippers and you nip it off. If you can't quite get there, sometimes you can. There we go. So this is what the loop looks like, and I know it looks horrible, but we're not done yet. We put our tool here. This is a perfect cone. It's out of a Milwaukee piece of equipment that is used to splice plastic pipe together. So this is solid, and this is what that horrible loop looks like right now. So we're going to fix that. So we're going to put that on top of here, and you can see how, you can't see from the camera angle, but you can see how terribly out of round this thing is. And then I'm going to select one of these sockets, an ordinary automotive socket, and I'm going to use a hammer. I'm going to hammer this to conform with that cone underneath. And I know the camera is going to bounce a little bit, but here we go. So you can tell already that the loop itself is looking much more round. Now I know it's cockeyed, it's not square, we got to square that all up, but I'm not quite ready pounding. I got to do a little tiny bit more. I use a slightly bigger socket, a couple more whacks. Okay. So there is what the loop looks like before any adjustments. And then I'll take my wire pliers and bend it back. So that's starting to look better. It's starting to look centered. So then what I'll do is I'll take off this tool. I'll put the loop in the vise. Gonna bring those two pieces kind of flat that make the loop, and then I'm going to, this is not quite square, so I'm going to put a little bit of a torque on this bottom wrap around, and I'm going to bring it up to square as best as I can. So that loop is now ready. So it's going to go in like this. Now, the reason I've used 3/32 is you always want to use the toughest possible, and if this larger lure, this is the 8-inch lure, if you happen to tie into a big tuna or a wahoo, you're going to need very strong stuff here, because they'll actually bend weaker stainless steel. Some of the commercial lures have very light stainless steel. It's too bad too, because they have through wire construction, but then they went light. So that's what it's going to look like. So now what I have to do is I have to mark this end here. So I just happen to have my handy green marker here, and I'm going to mark this stainless steel. Now, in order to install this wraparound has to be down here, so it's invisible. So when I make this loop, my loop has to start and end at the green mark, and the wraparound can go to my left. So to do that, we're going to cut some of it off. It's just too long to be handy. And now comes the time when you want to try and make stuff parallel. So I kind of line up the front loop up and down, and then what I do is I grab this with my wire pliers. Now there's always a fair bit of straightening out on this stainless steel wire. The loops have to look right, they have to be square. There's a fair bit of work. So I'm going to do like I did before, bend down and then up and over. So you can see I'm pretty darn close to that green mark, but I want to be right on it, so I squish it back again. And now I'm going to do the wraparound. And again, 2 turns around is more than enough. If you enjoy doing this wraparound, which I kind of do, sometimes I'll go 3 or 4, but it just means that there's more wood that you've got to take out for the wraparound to fit. Now the 7-inch lure, I'm going to use a lighter stainless steel. And it just makes building the lure that much easier. Still very tough. It probably has about a 300-pound breaking strength, so unless you catch a big wahoo or a big old tuna with a pair of pliers in the pocket, it'll be just fine. Alright, so once again, the loop is horrible. It's not round, it's not square, all kinds of things wrong. And rather than waste your time with my tool, I'll just say do the same again to the rear loop. Now the next thing we have to do before we do that is we have to make a little clip. I mentioned this clip before. So what happens is this clip goes around the center wire, and what you do is you put it around the center wire and you crimp it So this center wire can't go anywhere. So if a big fish takes it, it's connected right to the main wire. Probably impossible for any fish of any reasonable size to break this other than sharks. A shark can't even cut the stainless steel. But this is in fact what the final build will look like. And then of course it all has to fit inside the wood, and then the top go on it. So here's the belly loop, and to get this right, you lay the belly loop where it needs to go. I'm sorry, my fingers may get in the way. And you take a marker and you mark where the main wire comes across. Now, one of the things you got to be careful is you got to make the bend on this side, because that bend has got to come up and over and around. And if you bend it right on the green mark, it's not going to fit right, it's going to be short. So you always got to make it longer. And to do that, so to make this bend, I used an ordinary pair of needle nose pliers, and I use a square side up by the cutter here. And I go up, oh, maybe even a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. You'd rather be long than short. If it's short, you start over again. So every material has a bending radius, and it'll consume some material in that bend. So here we go. Okay, so notice now that the bend is higher than the green mark. So now what I got to do is I got to cut off the excess. I may in fact have to cut this twice. I don't want to get too short. And then I go back to my trusty vise and finish the clip. Now, you still got to put it through the main wire, so don't make it too tight. So I always keep a little piece of the material around, and it's got to go through here, which is fine, but it's also got to go in and around here. So you can do one of two things. You can clip that off a little bit, or you can just kind of bend it up. I prefer to bend this up a little bit. Now this goes through here, and then you take your pliers and you crimp this as best you can. Okay, so that cannot come off. As I said, unless that fish has got a pair of pliers in his pocket, that can't come off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this back where we've already fitted it. We're going to put this back where it belongs, and now we have to chew away a little bit of wood in this area. And this is one of the little chisels I use. It's a fairly cheap wood carving set, but I keep them razor sharp. And of course you can see here this clip takes space, and I got to dig that out to of the wood and bring that down. So when I put my second piece on, which I'll have also chewed out, that the whole thing goes together like a ham sandwich. So here's what the lure looks like after it's been all kind of extra wood taken out to allow that stainless steel to go in. And of course bear in mind that this center loop has to be lined up. And one of the things that we're going to do next is when we glue it, we have to make absolutely sure that this front is lined up, because now that stainless steel is there, very, very difficult to sand in here. So I've got some nice little clamps, and we're going to put some wood glue on this and then let it glue overnight. So when I glue this, I'm rather careful about how much glue I put on, This is not like kind of gluing a couple pieces of oak together where making that glue squish out is your objective. I put a bead of wood glue where it has to go. And then I use my finger to kind of move it around to make sure it gets into locations that I want all over. Now, this is an Elmer's glue that I'm using, and it's actually rated waterproof. Now, knowing full well that not much water will ever get into this lure other than after it has been through several large toothy fish. And then once it's caught its first fish, all bets are off. I can't make my lures like the commercial lures out of solid ABS that can take 3, 4, maybe 5 big fish. My lures, depending on how they're bitten, may last 3 or 4 or 5, but probably no more, because then they'll get all chewed up, and they just won't be able to take that abuse from those toothy critters. So I've got the stainless steel already lined up here, and again I'm just going to put this sandwich together. It's like any old ham sandwich. Now, one of the real bargains I got a number of years ago was a set of small clamps. These clamps have been absolutely a boon. They were like $3. So sometimes you get a bargain in your life, and this certainly has been extremely useful. Now, you'll generally put on a couple clamps. Make sure that that front is perfect, not close. This is not one of those times when close is good enough. This is not a hand grenade. It's got to be spot on. One of the annoying parts that you can have this thing all clamped up and you walk away and you come back an hour later that the glue is set and you look at it and the two pieces have moved a little bit. That's very disheartening. It does happen from time to time. You try not to clamp this like you're clamping too big piece of oak. You don't crank it on as much as you can. This is fairly light wood, and if you really crank on it, you could actually crack it, which is something you do not want to do. But you go back again and again, making sure it's lined up, and then hopefully you can get another clamp on it. Okay, and if possible, I like to get a clamp right on the very end. Now I keep going back into this concave part. A little bit of glue always squishes out there, and when it hardens, it's a real tough thing to get out. So now I'm going to go right across the mouth of it. Again, I get a little squish of glue, and I got to get in there with something to get that glue out of there. Okay, so this is lined up absolutely perfect. I can take off a little tiny bit of glue on the seam. There'll be a bit of sanding. This is one of the negative parts about splitting the lure. You got to sand on that glue line, and as you're sanding, the glue is harder than the wood, and you'll tend to leave a ridge. And if you're not aware of it, it's very hard to see. You can only feel it with your fingers. You really can't see it. and then you come back and you say you're done and you paint it and there's this darn ridge sticking out. So this is experience talking. I've done this many times. Okay, we're ready to let this dry.